Welcome to AlexGs Aquarium, everybody. Today I have an update on my aquarium system. I know it's been a few months and we're in some really strange and unprecedented times right now, but I wanted to kind of take a little bit of time out of my day and share with everybody what's been going on with the aquarium system. There's been a lot that's happened in the last few months. I believe my last update was in November of last year. And there's a lot of things to talk about. I have spent a lot of time with family and occasionally getting on to the Saturday Night live streams with Reef Girl, which I'll link that down below. Some really nice community live stream. I'm honored to be invited to come in as a guest and participate, so thank you, Reef Girl. And now on to the aquariums. Now I'm going to jump right into the 480 gallon reef aquarium. And this tank has really been doing well. Like any tank, there are some minor issues. I do have aptasia in the tank, and they're at a manageable level. I really do need to go out and get some Bergia and nudibranchs again. I had them once before, and they pretty much eliminated the aptasia, but of course there were one or two in places that they couldn't get to them, and you know how that goes. They just slowly start to multiply again. Been using Aptasia X and F-Aptasia to kind of deal with them in the meantime. I've thought about getting a filefish that eats Aptasia or possibly a copper band butterfly, but it really does make me nervous to add one of those given all the LPS I have, especially my bubble corals. That's something that I'm just going to deal with over time and probably get some more nudibranchs. Fortunately, the Aptasia have spread into my Frag tank and my refugium tank, so I'll have to add some in there as well to help control that. On the plus side though, the 480 gallon reef is doing amazing. The LPS section is growing out like crazy. All the frog spawns and hammers I have are doing really well and growing out very nicely. I've had some gonophora in the last month or two and started to get them going at a nice low light and moderate flow area. The sea anemones are something else that has really been kind of a change from where they were. I had a bit of a funny story around the splitting of my sea anemones, but I had one rainbow bubble tip that I brought in from another small tank, and my original Chicago sunburst, which had gotten to the size of a dinner plate and just would not split. I have talked about that multiple times on live streams, probably even in some videos, just wondering why this thing wouldn't split. Well, a weird accident kind of happened with that. I accidentally pumped 30 gallons of 60-degree fresh water into this aquarium system when I was going to do a water change. Wasn't intentional, it was totally an accident, my fault for keeping the valve open when I turned a recirculation pump on. By the time I noticed it, there was already 30 gallons in the displays, so just added salt to the tank. It really didn't impact the overall salt level in the system. It dropped it from 1.026 to 1.025 and dropped the temp a couple of degrees. Funny thing is though, the one rainbow bubble tip I had split a day later, and then a little less than a week later my giant Chicago sunburst went ahead and split, and subsequently both of them have split again, so now I have 3 of each. Even though you can't really tell with the Chicago sunburst, there are actually 3 anemones on that rock. And the rainbow bubble tips, I got a couple on my one arch. Another one took a walk into some corals and I had to take it off, which subsequently resulted in a bit of an anemone sting, the likes of which I have not experienced in a long time. I had to go in between some rocks and pull it off, and I had just a little tiny cut on my cuticle and finger over here, and the sea anemone latched onto that piece, and wow, I have not experienced that level of pain for a while. I did the hot water trick where you kind of put the hottest water you could stand on it and then dump some vinegar on it, and after about 10-15 minutes the throbbing kind of settled down. But it's not something I want to repeat anytime soon. But hey, the sea anemones are splitting, so what can you do? Moving on in the tank, the soft coral section is looking amazing. The zoanthid garden is filled out very nicely. Getting a little overrun with Nirvana pallies, I've got a great trick though that I've been using to kind of, keep them a little under control, because they've been just overrunning some of the other zoas that I want to be growing in there. And that's just to continuously sprinkle rubble rock right over the top of them. They'll grow off the main rock onto that, and then I could pull them off with just some minimal cuts, so I'm not just tearing them off the rocks and having to worry about things like palitoxin. And it's worked out really well for me and helped some of the other zoanthid colonies get a little bit more breathing room in there. But that's how zoanthids are, and eventually I'm probably going to just give up on that battle and let them do their thing. I'm going to regulate some of the zoanthids and pallies to go on to small individual little island rocks from now on. The rest of the soft corals, though, I gotta say, wow. The toadstools are looking amazing. I got a weeping willow toadstool, just a small one that's starting to grow out. Really looks nice when it's opened up. The green sinularias, I have 3 different varieties: the mint green, the standard green, and then the biota palau, which is just almost looks fake because it's so bright, but it's really a beautiful soft coral. The stereonepthia colonies, I've got my yellow with purple with pink tips, and then my pink Japanese stereonepthia, which really, really looks nice. It's as close as you can get to a carnation coral being photosynthetic. So I highly recommend, if you're into soft corals, you go and look for stereonepthias. They're one of my favorites. Fireworks, clove polyps are really growing out nicely. I know the one thing everyone's going to be talking about in the soft coral section is that Xenia? Did you put Xenia in a 480 gallon reef tank and you put that coral in there? Come on, there's got to be something wrong. I know what everybody's thinking, but before you jump to conclusions, I want to really state this up front. This is not a normal run-of-the-mill species of Xenia coral. This is what is called a heteroxenia, and also called giant Xenia. They don't spread nearly as fast, and they're a lot slower growth. I actually started off with this as like a little 1-2 inch frag, and it now has like a 5-inch stalk on it and a head that's starting to branch off up top, and that's over fist size. I mean, the thing's got to be that big around, and just gorgeous. And the reason I got this species of Xenia is because they are pretty rare in the hobby. Even when I worked in local fish stores, trying to import them was very difficult. They just had very poor survivability. I managed to get a hold of an aquaculture piece a few months ago, and it has been just growing nice and steady, not too fast. Loves the spotted fin, and it just looks amazing. So that's why I have that Xenia. But overall, soft coral section looking great. Moving on, I got a Setosa that's been growing in really nicely, kind of replaced the one I lost during my coral crash. I've got another forest fire digi or a bubble gum, I'm not sure which it is. I think it's a forest fire. I've got a little frag of that started out there. Some other zoas. I see anemones I already talked about. And then moving into the SPS section, this part of the tank has got quite a bit going on. My one giant acropora is really doing nice on the far left side of the tank. I don't know the name of it. It's green with the blue-purple tips. Really looks nice. I've actually taken some sizable chunks off of it because it's starting to shade where it was basing out on the bottom, and I didn't want to start killing it from within. So I've gone ahead and continued to frag that coral up and make a lot of little frags of it. I got a few other colonies. There's a Hawkins echinata and a Jason Fox Barney that are both starting to really grow out nicely. That Barney is really based out nicely and starting to put branches out. And another one I think is a Battle Coral's Ultimate Table that is really encrusted well and is starting to grow a lot of nice branches out. Overall, a lot of the SPS is still pretty small. I had a lot of SPS that I bought in kind of the December, January, even into the February time frame, and I didn't put it into the main display because I finally got my frag tank running, and I've taken the stance of all my SPS from now on, I'm going to grow it out in the frag tank for a while, frag it there, and then put those frags into the display just so that they don't get knocked over or lost. I actually had one recently that, a frag got knocked off, and I ended up finding out a few days later the royal grandma had picked it up and moved it in its nest, and I had to dig it out of there. I couldn't find it for a couple of days, and it was really frustrating to go, where did this thing go? This little frag, doesn't just disappear, and come to find out a fish carried it off and made it part of its nest. Which it was not happy when I reclaimed a piece of Acropora. As a matter of fact, the royal grandma took a couple swipes at me, which was kind of funny because they're such docile fish. Overall, SPS section's doing really nice. I got some hobbyists that are growing out really nice. My lemon spice is looking good. I got a day glow, and I just put a dragon soul frag onto another rock. Just start letting them cover and encrust those rocks. Unfortunately, during my coral crash, my pavona with all the Christmas tree worms on it died. But the Christmas worms have all been doing really well. I have a lot of particulate matter in the tank to feed everything. In part, I don't run filter socks. I try to let all those natural foods go in. So they've been doing really well in a nice high current area. So I took some Jason Fox Free Care, a couple frags of that, and put it on there. So I'm just going to let it slowly encrust to that and see what happens. Now I did go ahead and add more water flow to the SPS section. I put one MP40 on the back wall going forward. I'm probably going to put a second one on that SPS section. Just put it in the reef crest and let it really start turning up that whole area. As some of these SPS colonies are growing out, I'm just feeling that the gyres, while they do produce a lot of flow over there, that even more mixing and randomness will be very helpful to that SPS section. So I'll add another one there eventually. Overall though, corals are doing phenomenal. The growth has been really, really high. I've been having to turn up the calcium reactor a ton in this tank to keep up with everything that's going on. The fish are all doing well in the 480 as well. No new additions. The last thing I did was add a bunch of royal grandmas and kind of build up that harm again. So there's a total of 7 of them in there right now. And I do have one issue going on with the 480 gallon tank itself. On my one part of the Euro brace, unfortunately there was a little gap in the waterproofing somewhere on a piece of plywood that was cut on edge, and I got some moisture intrusion in there. Now this isn't a piece of wood that's submerged. It hasn't impacted the side walls or any of the structure of the tank. It did delaminate a section of plywood on the Euro brace that's foot and a half long. Not a really big deal in my eyes because the tank is so overbuilt. I could probably cut that section out and it's not really going to hurt anything. I haven't done a repair yet. I've been thinking about how I want to do it, and I've been really just watching it. I sealed it off with silicone and super glue to make sure that it has stopped and it doesn't continue to spread and become a bigger problem. And it's been stable now for about 2 months, 3 months, which means I'm probably at the stage where I can go ahead and start thinking about repairs. I might talk more about that on a future video, but I want everyone to know that's a risk we run with building things out of wood. And if these things happen, luckily it's not in a critical area and it's not impacting anything at this time. But all's fair in this hobby, and everything I talk about on my aquariums channel. So that's something that has happened. And if I was going to do it over again, that inner lip of the Euro brace where there's cut plywood, I would fiberglass it and pond armor it to give it an extra layer of protection. Rest of the tank is good, the 720 is good, so no issues anywhere else. Moving on to the 720 gallon tank. This tank, it's just so much fun to watch everything grow out. I haven't really been putting any corals in this tank. I tried a couple of blue-green campanella trees. I got a frag of it. I just keep in the frag tank that's been dropping little trees in there like crazy, which is fine. It's not hurting anything, and it's a nice blue-green variety. Tried to place a couple into the 720, and every time I do, I don't know how long they actually last, but something is eating them. Between the triggers and the angels and the puffer, something's thinking that they're a good snack. I'll probably continue to try that though over time, maybe a couple of the bigger pieces. I know I had those beautiful colt corals in here, and unfortunately lost them over time, and I'm starting to really wonder if they were getting snacked on and that's why I lost them in the first place. The fish though are just doing amazing. The purple pseudochromis I have in there, there's still 3 of them. They're all getting a nice adult size, but they have actually been breeding in this tank and they lay eggs. And the reason I know that is one night I was looking at the tank for bioluminescence and I turned the flashlight on and I see all these little reflective eyes looking back at me. And it turns out it was baby fish floating around the tank, which I just thought was really amazing to see. I actually put them under a microscope and looked at them, and I posted on my Instagram some videos of them, so if you look at that, I got some from back late last year. Just really cool, and I've seen them breed a number of times, but just a really cool thing to see. It to me is a sign of a good, healthy aquarium. As far as the rest of the fish go, the angels are starting to transition on the annularis. It's almost a full adult colors now. The emperor angel is also transitioning nicely. And it's hard to believe that my little tiny baby clown trigger is now almost the size of the porcupine puffer that almost accidentally ate it when I first got it. So really, really impressive. My blue line trigger's growing out nicely, and I know they could be rather aggressive. And I'm hoping with this size tank that'll help to ease some of that, but I will keep a close eye on that trigger. If it does get to the point where it's just not going to get along with its tank mates, I'll go ahead and rehome it. But hopefully with this size tank it'll have plenty of room to grow out, have plenty of territory, and right now that clown trigger's help keeping it in check. Now as far as adding new fish to the 720 gallon, I think I'm probably about done, maybe 1 or 2 more, but a lot of these fish get really large and I want to give them the space they need to grow out in the proper way. So that's the 720 gallon tank. Let's move on to the fish room, refugium, and frag tank. There's been a lot going on back here. Protein skimmer's running great. The radiant heating system's been working good. My Apex temp probe is due for a replacement, so it's been off just a little bit. Not enough to be a concern though. It only acts as an overheat protection on my radiant heating system, so it's got another level of temperature controller on there. In either case, I've been just keeping an eye on it, but the system ran great this winter. So now that it's starting to get into spring, it's going to operate a little less. Overall, really happy with it still. Protein skimmer is still jamming. Now on the protein skimmer, I've been thinking about experimenting a little by adding a forced air pump into this thing, where I start injecting more air to see how it impacts skimming, see if I could generate more. I do generate a really dry, thick skim, and I know it's plenty for this system, but I like to tinker with things, so I might be doing that in the near future. We'll see. UV sterilizer's been running great, just did a bulb change on it. That thing's still running like a champ, and really I think it does benefit the system. Not as much on pathogen control, but a little bit on that, a little bit on algae control. But the fact that it kind of acts as another means to kind of break down some organic chemicals, especially with, chemical warfare on corals. I've been reading some scientific papers on the effects of UV on different kinds of toxins in water, and there are some studies out there that show that some toxins are broken down by it, and it's just the ability to control some of those. I use a little bit of activated carbon in the tank too, but it's just a bag I toss in once a month when I do a 200-gallon water change. So the UV I think is a good thing to have on here. Calcium reactor is still running great. Media levels are starting to go down on it. I'm going to have to look to add more. I am using Reborn. I know they've had some supply issues the last few months. I'm hoping that that is back in stock soon. I've heard some good things, but I haven't really checked on it lately. Refugium tank, wow, this thing is just growing macroalgae like crazy. The Chaeto is kind of slowed down and is just there, but I have some Caulerpa plurifera that really took off, and then a Caulerpa taxophora, which I didn't really add to the tank. I knew that it was in the tank when I bought the live rock, and it never really took off. Well, it decided it was time to grow, and it has taken over the back wall. I've already ripped out half of it once, and now it's starting to shade the bottom part of the algae, and it's dying off and just growing more heavily up top. I have to say the Kessel Tuna Sunlight that I put on there to replace one of my DIY LED fixtures, that thing grows algae really nicely. And I even have some red grape algae that took over on the wet side of the MP40. Don't ask me why it grows there, but I ain't messing with it. I just pull it off and groom it once in a while. And I still get great flow out of the thing when I clean it off. So refugium's doing well. The mantis shrimp, of course. Miss Stabby is happy as ever. Very much going after all her food. And I just love having that little mantis shrimp in there. It's just a real highlight of keeping that refugium. The frag tank, I have not talked about my frag tank much, and I think in my last video I was just starting to, I had it up and running but nothing going in it. Well, it's about full with coral now. Some of it is intentional, some of it not so much, and what I mean by that is I got a lot of SPS I put in there intentionally, some macroalgae I'm growing in there intentionally, and a bunch of different frag plugs. I do have a couple different types of zoas / pallies that have started to take over on the egg crate frag rack, which unfortunately the only way to really deal with that properly is to cut the egg crate out. And I think what I'm going to do is just buy some proper acrylic frag racks to put into this tank. That way when something starts to overgrow or encrust, it's not going all over the egg crate, and I could scrape it off with a razor blade and just deal with it a lot easier than what it is now. I don't want to get into more coral warfare, but everything in there is growing like crazy. The one bounce mushroom I have has been in that tank, and it recovered from being stung by something, and that thing is just, massive now. Overall, everything in the frag tank's doing good. And as I said, all the corals I've been buying, I've been putting them into that tank, letting them grow out, and putting frags into the reef. The other thing I've been doing with the frag tank is growing out some frags and working with my local fish store to just turn them in for credit during these difficult times. The storefront's not open, and he's been selling his corals on his website, so I consider the owner of the LFS a friend of mine, and stores Reef Plus in North Aurora, Illinois. Got a website. He does local deliveries. He'll do curbside with it right now. And I think it's really important, no matter where you are, what local fish store it is, it's important to support these businesses right now more than ever in these challenging times. So if you are looking to get some things for your tank, whether it just be some essential supplies, or you're looking to get some livestock, I would definitely contact your local fish store, see if they are doing anything with selling curbside, and just helping them clear out some inventory if they have it there, because these businesses are important to our hobby. Other than that, the only other thing that's happened in this aquarium system is I did have to change out my reflow hammerhead pump, and just because it had a seal failure. And I know these seals fail. It's part of owning a pump that has a seal on it. And this is the first one that's gone out in less than a year on me. But overall, I'm not too worried about that. I know some people really get infuriated when they see these pump seals fail. But I really want everyone to understand, it's not just water you're pumping through this thing. All the marine life and marine buildup, those little tiny particles get into those seals and they wear faster because of that. So it's something to keep in mind when you have a pump like that. And while I'd like to swap it out for a really nice high-end DC pump, I could buy like half a dozen reflow hammerheads for one of those, and really the energy savings isn't going to be all that much compared to these, because they're pretty energy efficient for the water volume they're pushing out. That's basically all that's been going on with the aquarium system. Thanks for sticking in there for this long video. I know I had a lot to talk about. It was a bit long-winded, but wanted to get all out there. So to everyone out there on the other side of this camera, I really hope that you and your family stay safe and healthy during these difficult times, and you spend and cherish the time with your loved ones, and call friends, say hello to people you haven't said hello to in a while, because this is just a really unprecedented time for all of us. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and I'll see you on the next video.